What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Joannis or Joe Hatagwa. I'm a Sierra Leonean American living here in Accra, Ghana. And if you're interested in what's going on in Ghana news today, then this is the video for you. All right. We are live. What's going on, everybody? As you know, for those of you who've been here before, you guys know me. But those who are new, I'll do a quick introduction. Again, my name is Joannis. Some people do call me Joe. My last name is Hatagwa. I'm a Sierra Leonean American living here in Accra, Ghana. I've been here since December of last year. I do lives every Monday where I talk about my experience here. I'm working full time here in Ghana at a company called Jumia, which is an e-commerce company, the Amazon of Africa. It's publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. So I work for Jumia, and let me know if you guys can hear me. It looks like my connection is a bit choppy. Okay, Jose Cruz said he's interested to hear about this topic. He'll be here in a moment. Jack Jackson, hello all. Great topic today. What's up, Jack? Ms. P, haven't seen you in a while. What's up? Shout out to you. Who do we got on Instagram Live? That's Facebook Live. We got Kylie Calv in the building. We got YMCMB 1955 in the building. So we got a few people joining. It's the usuals, but then some new people I see. So shout out to you all. Thanks for joining. So today is going to be a very controversial topic. We'll get into that in a second, but as I always do, I want to start by just doing some quick housekeeping, making sure those of you who are new to the channel know who I am and how you can find me and find my content. So we'll start with that, and then I will get into the content of today's content, I should say. All right, cool. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Let me know when you guys can see my screen. I know there's a lot of windows open. Hope it doesn't give anybody anxiety. I'm a guy who has a lot of windows open all the time. All right, cool. All right, so again, this is the Authentic African YouTube channel. There are many reasons why it's called Authentic African. Main reason was just because it wasn't taken, and I like the name, but actually because I like to share things that are authentically African or from the diaspora. So anything that's happening in Africa and the diaspora, that's what I've been sharing on the Instagram page, for those of you who are following the Instagram page. And then for the YouTube channel, there's a little bit of that, but also African history, my experience moving to the continent, and everything in between. So let's keep it going. So we're going to talk about the dates and times I upload videos. We'll talk a little bit about the website, and then we'll get into the topic of today's discussion, which is Ghana's new controversial bill that has been introduced by some MPs here, and it's been a topic of discussion at the office where I work. And so that's why I thought I might pose it to the audience, those who subscribe to my channel, who follow me. All right, cool. So real quick, here's the weekly schedule. I do lives every Monday, 9 p.m. GMT. As of right now, that's 5 p.m. EST and 2 p.m. PST. I also do video on Fridays. I try to keep it on Fridays. Sometimes it ends up being on Saturday, but it's really just kind of like my week in review, what's happened through that week. And lastly, I do a video on Sunday that usually is about my experience. So those of you who haven't checked it out yet, go back and look at the last 2 Sunday videos that I put out. I did the chimpanzee sanctuary the Sunday before this last one. And then yesterday I posted a video about the Sierra Leone Icons exhibit, the people who kind of made Sierra Leone what it is today. And so there'll be videos like that, things that are like educational, things that showcase my lifestyle here, going to different places, going to historical sites, nightlife, restaurants, things like that. All of that stuff is covered with my YouTube channel. Even things like how to set up your phone service, how to send mobile money, all that kind of stuff. All of that stuff is coming, and interviews with startup founders, and interesting people living on the continent. So that is the weekly video schedule. It's going to be 3 videos a week every week. So stay tuned for that. All right. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share with people who might find this content interesting, or who might potentially be planning to move here or visit. The idea is for those people to be able to ask somebody directly who's lived in the West before, who lives here now, what my experience has been like. And hopefully I can help other people so that their landing is more smooth when they decide to make the move. Here's a little bit about my website. So again, Authentic African is a brand that covers a number of different things, but there's also a website. It's an e-commerce store where I sell products made in Africa. And right now I'm selling them just in the US. But you can find everything from baskets and hampers to African instruments to collectibles. I bought a bunch of this stuff myself before I even started the store. So for instance, I have a chess set that is all ancient Egyptian gods. I thought was interesting. So instead of like the normal European chess set, it's an Egyptian chess set, and some people actually believe that chess was actually invented in Egypt. There's a very similar game to it, like if you look at some of the hieroglyphs. So yeah, so that's that. Also, real quickly, for those of you on Instagram Live, I'm gonna pin a comment, the link to the YouTube Live. If you want to watch on YouTube, since I'm sharing my screen right now, you guys can head over to YouTube to watch it from there. Okay. So here we go. We're going to jump into this controversial new bill in Ghana. But before we do, this discussion is definitely a controversial topic, and there are a lot of views and differing opinions. So what I want to say to begin with is, number one, today I'm not going to have anybody come on live and talk live because I'm a little nervous about how people might respond to the topic. So I think what's going to be good is just make sure that we're respectful in the comments. I'm definitely going to be pulling up the comments, putting them up on screen on YouTube Live, and then I'll be reading some comments from Instagram Live. Be respectful. Let's try to stick to facts and not feelings, right? Facts and not feelings. Let's try to be as objective as possible when looking at this, right? So I'm going to talk to you guys about the bill and a little bit about what I've been hearing here locally with some of the people that I work with. And then I'd love to hear from you all on your thoughts. So I'll go through some of the, so there's a question already. So Melagoddess One asked, what bill? So the bill is, and I don't want to get the name wrong. So give me a second to just pull it up. The bill is titled the Promotion of Proper Human Sexual Rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill. Okay, so that's the name of the bill, and it's basically been coined an anti-LGBTQ bill. And so the reason why it's become really popular as of recent is there was a recent interview on CNN, and it was CNN International. The host of the show was, I think, Kenyan, and he was interviewing the MP that introduced the bill. And the MP who introduced the bill completely demolished the guy who was hosting the show. It was a bad faith argument. It was just bad, and it didn't go well for the CNN anchor. And so it's been a popular point of discussion here, at least in my office and some of the people who I've talked to here locally. And so we'll talk about it a little bit because, coming from the US, I've lived in New York and in Los Angeles, where they're very socially liberal, and living in a very conservative country. It's been really interesting to hear people's viewpoints on this here locally. So what I'm going to do is read a little bit about the bill. I definitely recommend, if you guys are interested in this topic, that you guys go and check out the bill yourself. And I'll put a link in the description here for where you can find this bill. I read through some of it, and I will say it's there's a lot there. But what I'll do is I'll just do kind of a brief like synopsis of the bill. What are the major points that have been coming up, so that we can like talk through what some of the beliefs are and why we are where we are today in terms of this bill being introduced and why I wanted to talk about this. So again, the other day I was in the office and I overheard a conversation, between two different guys that I work with, and one of them was just talking about how he was um, he was kind of rooting for the guy who introduced the bill. At least that's the way I interpreted the conversation, and how he handled himself on CNN, talking to the guy at CNN. Um, and so I was kind of interested in what they were talking about. What was this? Because he mentioned CNN. I'm familiar with CNN, obviously, and so I wanted to know who he was talking about, what he was talking about. So I looked it up, and I read about this bill. So a couple things to keep in mind. Again, this is a forum where we're open to different ideas and thought processes. Would love to hear everybody thinks, but let me walk you guys through this bill, at least how I know it, and some of the facts about it. And then I want to open it up to you guys to get your thoughts, and maybe give you a little bit of my thoughts as well. So before I even get into the bill, let me just give you guys some facts, okay? Because again, we want to talk about facts, not feelings, because I think that's really important here when we're talking about these things. So number one, so again, the name of the bill, to be clear, it's a bill that hasn't been introduced into law yet. There still has to be votes. It still has to go through to be law. But right now, it's a bill. And it says the promotion of proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family values bill. That is the name of the bill. It's a very long bill. All right. So one thing I've just recently found out, which is interesting, is that about 90% of Ghanaians say they support a law criminalizing same-sex relationships. Now, this is according to a 2014 poll. It was reached by a research group called Afrobarometer. Now, look, it's a poll. It's a subset of people. It probably does not represent the entire country, but it represents a portion of the country. And most polls that you hear about are a subset of a larger group, right? And so that just lets you know where this is already coming from. Okay. Now, the concept of non-natural intercourse, I put that in parentheses, or sorry, in quotations, because that is how it was done in this article. And same-sex marriage and relationships has been a crime under the criminal code since 1960. So it's already punishable by up to 3 years of imprisonment here in Ghana. However, according to this article, no one's actually been prosecuted for non-natural intercourse. Wow, that's an interesting way of putting it. And same-sex marriage or relationships. So so that is where we're starting from, right? So we already know that there's a law on the books that already criminalizes same-sex acts, let's say. So that's one. Now, there are 8 members of parliament who proposed this bill, and it was introduced on August 2nd. So I'm really just finding out about this now because of the conversation in my office. But apparently it was introduced on August 2nd, and I think it's working its way through the legal systems here, and they're deciding and determining if they want to make this a law. Let me just do a quick check. Can everybody hear me? Mr. Bounce Los Angeles, what's up, man? Thanks for joining. Can you guys hear me? Let me know. Before I get into more of this, I just want to do a quick check. Sharif Foxworth, peace and blessings. You can hear me good, good, good. Okay. All right. So let's get into it. All right. So the proposed legislation aims to provide for quote unquote proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family values. So the bill also restricts LGBTQ plus communities and any activities related to them. People advocating for the rights of these sexual minorities will also be penalized. So campaigning for LGBTQ plus persons on social media or online platforms is prohibited under this bill. All right. Section 5(1) of the bill makes it a duty of a person to report under those presence the offense has been committed. So that means like if you were in the presence of someone who committed this offense according to this law, you are asked to report it to either let me read it. A person in whose presence an offense is committed under this act shall report the commission shall report the commission of the offense to a police officer or in the absence of a police officer to a political leader, opinion leader, or the customary authorities in the community in which the offense is committed. So not only is it technically, according to this bill, against the law to commit any of these acts, and they don't really list out the acts from what I've seen so far. But you're also, if you witness it, you're supposed to report it, which is interesting. Okay, and again, according to a survey, now this was 2014, but according to a survey, 90% of the people in Ghana, according to the survey, agree with criminalization of LGBTQ plus communities, right? All right, so real quick, Section 6 of the bill completely prohibits LGBTQ relations of and any related activity. The section also prohibits any surgery for sex or gender reassignment or any other procedure that can create a sexual category other than the sexual category of the person assigned at birth. Any person who commits an offense under this section, which is Section 6, is entitled to imprisonment ranging from 3 to 5 years or a fine or both. Section 12 of the bill completely prohibits any propaganda of, promotion of, and advocacy of activities prohibited under the proposed legislation. So, any form of assistance provided for any activity that is prohibited under this legislation is illegal and will be treated as a criminal act. If a person commits an if a person commits an act prohibited in this section, they will be liable on summary conviction to a term of imprisonment not less than 5 years and not more than 10 years. Okay, so that was a lot of information there. Any questions on anything I read? Anything you guys want me to reread? Does it all make sense to you all? What I just read? I mean, whether you agree with it or not, but was I clear on the basic tenets of this bill? Let me know in the comments if I was clear. And with that, if I was clear and there are no questions, let me start by giving my thoughts and ideas to start this off, because this is a very, very controversial subject. So I think it's important that maybe I start off with what I think, and then let you guys all jump in and let me know what you guys think. So, number one, what I've started to notice over the last like 6 years is there are minority groups, different minority groups all around the world who have been looking for a voice, whether that's through legislation, whether that's through just being legislation that allows them to be equal to their counterparts who are in the majority. And one of the arguments I hear a lot is, why do we as a majority have to do something based on a minority group, right? Which kind of sounds familiar. People don't like the equating of the two, right? Like race and sexual preference, because it's called sexual preference by a lot of people. But I think that is one way that this can be looked at, right? There's this idea that the majority does have this, they do not want to have to conform to ideas of a minority, right? And so that's what I've been hearing a lot, is the argument for a bill like this. Now, coming from the US, there's been bills and laws that go the opposite direction, right? That allow for people to be able to live their lives however they want, and it's less restrictive. And so in my mind, I just don't ever believe that the government should be in anybody's personal business, whether I am of that particular group or not. So I don't happen to be part of the LGBTQ plus community, but that doesn't mean that I feel like their rights should be restricted because of that. Now, I live in a country that does, so that's just the way it is, right? That's the country that I live in. That's just my personal belief system. But I've also lived in New York and LA. I've also done business with, have family members who are a part of the LGBTQ community. I actually have people that I would consider friends, or at least certainly acquaintances, that are part of the community. And so for me, it's really tough for me to see something that would have to restrict them from being able to live the way they want to live. Now, that is my opinion and my belief system based on this. So now, when I look at this law or this bill, it hasn't passed. It hasn't been passed into law yet. I think it poses some challenges for potentially for immigration, for people traveling here. You know, you're just when by doing things like this, you could potentially be affecting your bottom line, right? And I think that's the thing that in the U.S. I think they decided a long time ago that you know, regardless of where you stand personally on it, I think in the U.S. they decided to just kind of just at some point say, you know what, we're not going to be restrictive anymore, because at the end of the day, it's some number percentage of the population that you will lose, and everybody does things based on their own personal pockets and how much money they can make. And so I do think that that could be a mistake that could be being made by Ghana by doing that. Beyond everything else, which me, I just don't think personally it makes sense to restrict people. But again, that's the country, and that's what most people believe here from what I have read. So with that, let me jump into some questions and comments for what we've seen so far. So what do we got? We got Joe Jackson says, does unnatural acts include other acts as oral, anal? Yeah, I don't, and let me take that off the screen. I don't know. I presume yes, because at the end of the day, it's just talking about um, same-sex acts. So it would include those things. Yes, for sure. Um, so Jack says, point one, Ghana should not have made this an issue at this time when it's pushing for more foreign investment and investors. Right. So that speaks to what I was just saying about potentially affecting your finances, right? Um, Anytime you marginalize a group or you decide that you are not going to offer some laws or you're going to restrict a certain group, you're then reducing your opportunity for income, right? And we live in a capitalistic society. So whether you think it's morally right or wrong or all those kinds of things, that's one thing I think that moves a lot of people. And if you're trying to grow your travel, this might be one thing that can restrict that, like for sure. I don't know what the numbers are, but I know in the U.S. in terms of buying power, that's one community that that is a very tends to be affluent community in the U.S. And you know, there are just different people in all levels of society and all industries that happen to be LGBTQ, and you are now potentially excluding those people from potentially participating in your economy. So that's a good point, Jack. I agree with you on that. Um, let's see what else. What else do we got? So Pretty Malian says they're trying to, but they're wait, they're trying to put the gays on Africa. So are you saying that there aren't? Yeah. So I think pretty Malian rewrite. Tell me what you're trying to say. I want to see what you were trying to say, and let me see if I can address it. So Mr. Bounce Los Angeles says, if Ghana is a Christian nation, then it is in line with their biblical values. Procreation is important. Right. So so it is a majority Christian nation. People are very conservative in their conservative views here. And so that does fall in line with what I hear a lot of time here. People here talk about, like, literally that is one of the reasons why they feel that way. Somebody else I was speaking to at the office said something very similar. It was like, you know, my personal belief system, my Christian values doesn't allow me to agree with this lifestyle. But again, we're talking about whether, like, you know, it's a one thing to agree or disagree with a lifestyle. It's another thing to restrict, right? And so, so what do you guys think? Do you guys think it makes sense that they do that? It seems that Ghana is following what they consider traditional family values, right? And so, and here's one other thing I'll say as more comments and questions come in. You know what? You know, I've been studying a lot of human history, right? And what I'm realizing is when you get more diversity, you get more equal diversity as time goes on, right? And what that ends up meaning is that you find different kinds of humans that are all across the spectrum, right? Because at this point, procreation is not as important for the sustainability of the human race as it might have been, as it might have been, you know, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, right? And so if that's the case, that means that there are certain aspects of society that probably that might have been hidden previously that might be more coming to light, right? Because at the end of the day, just like, you know, we can fight over should there be a minimum wage, we can fight over whether or not you know, they should let people into one country versus not letting people into your country, right? These kinds of things can be fought over and disagreed upon because there isn't right now a need as a like as a group of people to just continue the human race, right? So there are different things now that are going to find their way to the public discussion, right? So with that, let me get back into some of the comments and questions. I wanted to stall a little bit, so some comments and questions came in. It looks like a few are coming in. So okay, so while Ace says, what made a government take this decision now? Also, how are more conservative countries such as the UAE, et cetera, able to have strict laws with the same response? Is it because of their economic power? Okay, so really quickly, this is 8 particular MPs. This isn't a federal law as of yet. This is a bill that was introduced. So I do want to just mention that. So it's not a law as of yet. It's a bill. And I think yes. Well, okay. So a couple things. It's been denounced by members of the United Nations, the bill itself, but since it's not a law yet, I don't think it's really made its way everywhere yet. Not everybody is talking about it. I hear a lot about it here, but I don't hear much about it like in the US and elsewhere. Um, but I do think other countries that have a really, really high economic value can have one or two things, right? You're going to have people who denounce it loudly because they're a very well populated and rich country and everybody knows about them. But there are also going to be people in power who don't say anything because those countries help fund different things that they care about, right? And so you probably get a little bit of both. I don't know how people have reacted to the UAE and there being conservative views on these kinds of things, but I mean, I think you're going to have both ends of the spectrum on that in terms of how people respond to it. Let me go back to Instagram Live. So, majority of Africa stands by religion, so we're not allowed those kinds of things. That is true. Yeah, I think that's so. Yeah, so that was pretty Malian, which was basically in response to my earlier question to rewrite her response. So that's what she was saying. Let's see what else we got. Facts is stop trying to change people's value, morals, and traditions or traditional. Yeah, I mean, look, I think that there are different viewpoints on this, right? I mean, there's the idea that some people want to keep what they consider traditional values, right? And they don't want to see those values be changed. My thought process is their personal values don't have to be changed, right? I don't think it has to affect them personally, unless, of course, they have someone who happens to be LGBTQ in their family or personally close to them. But at the end of the day, to me, I think everyone should probably have equal rights. That's my opinion. But I also do think that if you have that, then you're going to have concessions that when you have outliers that would try to take advantage of the system, that you have some things in place that would deter those people from doing so. So we'll get to that a little bit later. But like let's go into some more of these questions. So um, Ms. P says, I have a relative, a best friend who I'm very close to, and they are both in the LGBT community. I'm very protective of them both, and I'm very upset to hear this. Yeah, I mean, I have without because they told me in confidence. So without explaining how I know them, I know someone who people around them and people who watch these lives don't know that they happen to be LGBTQ. I mean, growing up, it was pretty obvious to me, but it's not obvious to everyone else in our family who know them. Um, but yeah, I mean, to me, hearing their story and understanding where they come from and knowing them how long I've known them, to me, it wasn't a choice to me. From watching how this person has grown up, it wasn't a choice. And it would had they not lived in the US, I don't know how they would live having grown up here. So I'll just say that I'm trying to say it without identifying who they are, because it was a very private matter for them. All right, so what do we got? What else we got? A British man got sentenced to 25 years in prison in Dubai due to the police finding his friend's CBD oil in the car. Yeah, I mean, well, so we're talking about strict nations with really strict laws. Yeah, that's wild. CBD oil, 25 years. That's crazy. That's crazy. As an advocate for cannabis consumption and uses for medical and personal use, I do not like the idea that somebody can get 25 years in jail for CBD oil. That's crazy. All right. So Jack Jackson says, point two, Ghana should have a constitution that protects all its citizens. This law would put LGBTQ at risk of being targeted and hurt. Now, I will say there are specific laws on the books now that do not allow for that technically make it illegal to take into your own. I can't remember the terminology now, but basically, like, mob justice is technically illegal. And so that is the argument that was made by this MP. Is like, some people's argument against the bill would be that there could be potential to put people's lives in danger. The argument of the guy who created the bill, or who's pushing the bill, is that there is something on the books that says you're not allowed to have mob justice and things like that. I don't think that still means that it won't happen. His other argument too was that, in the United States, where it's not illegal, the place where LGBT people are injured the most or killed the most is in the United States. But I think you also have to look at the number of crime. Crime in the United States is much higher here too, right? Much higher than here too. I think the U.S. is top 10. I think Ghana was number 27 or 37. So, I think it's very different in terms of like crime, but I do think that is a possibility when you make something like this law. There is a possibility that people could feel more emboldened to potentially physically hurt someone who happens to fall into this category. I'm not going to say that that's necessarily definitely going to increase crime, but I don't know. I can just say that there's a potential for that, for sure. Jack Jackson out here with the points. Point three, Africa has many LGBT. Yeah, yes. So on that topic, I will say that is the case for sure. I have a friend that I know, you guys know, I've mentioned this before. So, a friend of mine in Sierra Leone who has a business where she sells clothes in Sierra Leone. She has friends who are LGBTQ in Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone's a little bit more relaxed on that kind of stuff, I guess, from what I've seen. And so, but like they had all said, like in their earlier lives, they definitely hit it. Now it's kind of whatever. But, I mean, this is the thing, right? You're going to have it as a part of your society. And so what you're doing is you're having these people commit, because you're also making it unsafe for them. And they're probably doing things that are probably not as safe for themselves either, right? I mean, anytime you have to hide and do things in the dark, it does cause people to do things that they might not normally do and maybe put themselves at risk for different things. There's all kinds of things that could potentially create issues when you do that. So I think that there are long-term tertiary effects that could have a negative impact beyond the bottom line in terms of revenue and people traveling, but also to the people that this potentially affects. So Mr. Bounce Los Angeles says Dr. Umar Johnson is going to love this bill. Yeah, I mean, he would love this bill. From what I've heard of Dr. Umar Johnson, I think he would love this bill, specifically on the continent of Africa, because there's some belief by some people that these kinds of things need to be in place. And I think that he might be one of those people that believe that. Yeah. I don't know him personally, so I can't say. So, Mr. Bounce Los Angeles says, since the year of return, Ghana may be projected to get the visits tourists citizenship, etc. So they're not as concerned with potentially losing that community. Yeah, they might not be. But of course, this was introduced after the year of return, right? And so there may be some changes and effects, but we'll see because again, it's a bill, not a law yet. So if it becomes law, we'll see if there's some, you know, some issues there, right? Um, Melagada says once government gets one group, sets precedent to target other groups. No longer a democracy. You know, that is the conversation that happens for other kinds of things, right? There's always the conversation or the argument of the slippery slope, right? Once you say that you can't do this or you mandate this, then that means that they'll start to do that for other things, right? So that's one of the arguments that some people make about vaccines and personal rights, or you know, pro-choice, pro-life, pro-gun, you know, sensible gun laws, like these kinds of things, right? They say if you go one way and this thing, then you could potentially go further, and that's like the slippery slope argument that I hear a lot, actually, and that's a fair argument. Potentially, that could mean they could go after other groups. I don't know though, because in this case, it's I don't know what other groups they could potentially go after under the guise of traditional family values, but there is always that slippery slope argument. That is definitely a good argument there. Um, um, so Callie Calv is asking what does the bill have to say about the vaccine? Nothing particular to that. I think it's all specific to same sex acts, they say. Let's see, any other questions on it's an active Instagram live today. And YouTube is pretty active too. So all right, so let's get back to YouTube. So NKB says, if it is protection, why you think Ghana should offer them rights on the base of sexuality? Why is us that being the okay has the most abuse on the LGBT? So we know the issue isn't right. I think what you're trying to say is, can you rephrase the question, NKB? I think I think you're asking why they should offer them rights. So really quickly here, let me just be very clear. Um, I think that Ghana should do what Ghanaians want, right? I mean, at the end of the day, when you're in a country, your people are voting your elected officials into office, and they make a decision. But in my mind, I just don't think you should restrict any particular person. Um, Maybe they can decide they don't want to increase rights, which, even though I personally disagree with, that's not, you know, that's their country and it's their decision. Um, I don't know if it makes sense to introduce laws to decrease someone's rights, right? So in my mind, that's really what it comes down to, is that in particular. So I think I'm hoping I answered your question and that makes sense to you, but that's my personal belief. Um, Okay, so Mr. Bounce Los Angeles says, sometimes I get tunnel vision about reparations for our people, the liberation of our people. So this is just a conversation to me at this point. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I brought it up. So yes, so I do think all of those things are important. Liberation of our people, reparations. Whew, that's a tough one. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but yeah, reparations I definitely think is important. Yeah. However, again, this is a topic of conversation here in Ghana right now, and this is something that people are actually talking about. Like, I was in the office and it came up on multiple occasions over the last week or so, and I'm hearing a lot of discussions about it. So I wanted to pose it to the larger group, because, of course, the idea of this channel is authentic African. But I think what I want to do at some point is talk about reparations and how that would include certain people, but not all people. Like, I don't know if I would get reparations, to be honest with you. I might potentially be able to get reparations, but I might not, because both my parents were born and raised in Sierra Leone. However, Sierra Leone was founded by freed slaves. So does that, you know, Freetown, sorry, Freetown was founded by free slaves, at least the name and the capital. So I don't know if I'd get reparations, but that's another topic for another time, and we should talk about that for sure. Um, but Mr. Bounce Los Angeles said Ghana should be Ghana. Every country shouldn't emulate the United States or their so-called progressive ways. Yeah, every country should do as their country pleases. It doesn't necessarily have to be the United States, but I mean, I think, again, I'm saying I don't know if you should add laws to restrict people's lives, right? I think once you start doing that, I kind of agree with that slippery slope argument. Once you start restricting people's lives, that's where it could get pretty dangerous, right? Just Confused says it is already illegal in Ghana in our laws. This isn't new. The new proposal is because the pro LGBT recent push has been vocalized. No, so some of it is already clear, right? That 1960, what is it called? The bill from 1960. Um, yeah, so sorry, the criminal code since 1960 for the concept of non-natural intercourse or same-sex marriage or relationship. But this bill takes it a step further, right? Because it increases the time that you could spend in jail. It also now includes people um, who are advocates can also go to jail, and then also it includes the idea that you should report it if you witness it. So I do think it does add some layers of it too, which I also think if they introduce this bill, it seems as though they would want to enforce it more too, right? Like, so I think under the old bill, it doesn't seem to be enforced because from what I understand, nobody's been prosecuted for it as of yet. So it doesn't look like it's being enforced. I think when you introduce a new bill in this day and age with that level of detail, I think now it enforces things. And so it probably does change things just a little bit. But I do understand what you're saying. And technically, there has been something on the books since 1960 similar to this law. While A says it's interesting that the South African Constitution is one of the most progressive with equal rights safeguarded for all. It is the first to outlaw discrimination based on sexual orientation. Yeah, I mean, I think South Africa had a lot of things going on, right? With apartheid and with coming out of that, they had to make a lot of concessions and changes. And so, from what I understand, I think this kind of followed with that. But yeah, I think that every country is different, right? I mean, even in that argument, when I watched that CNN interview, um, the MP was like, I don't care about American values. These are Ghanaian values, right? He said, and then the interviewer said, well, I'm Kenyan. And he's like, well, I don't care about Kenyan values. You're Kenyan, we're Ghana. And I mean, that's the point here is that this is Ghana making their decision, right? So like I said, I mean, Ghana has the right to do whatever they want to do as a country. So and if they decide to pass this bill and make it law, then that's just, we'll see what comes of it afterwards. But I mean, at the end of the day, people voted these people into office, and when they introduce a bill, the MP who introduced the bill said he consulted with the different chieftaincies and different constituencies, and apparently that was something that they requested in their constituency. So I mean, he's saying he is doing the will of the people. All right, so Cali Calv, basically, I'm gonna just sum up what he said. He is saying that basically that homosexuality was brought to Africa by Europeans. There is some dispute on that, by the way, Cali Calv. I don't think that there has actually been definitive evidence of that. At the end of the day, there's, like I said, there's all kinds of diversity in humans, right? And so what that means is there's always going to be every kind of human in every kind of culture on every aspect of the planet. When you think about Africa as a continent, right, we are the most diverse continent. Even though people think of Africans as all a monolith, it's the most diverse continent on the planet. So you have diversity across all different things and orientations, sexuality, colors, creed, religions, all kinds of different things, right? So I would venture to say that it probably wasn't something that was as public as it probably is now, but there are some definitely sorry, there's definitely some dispute on that. I think there's some people who believe that it just came from Europe, right? Because the ancient Greeks apparently depicted it in their drawings, but some people say the ancient Egyptians actually depicted it in their drawings too. So now there may be some conflict with what people believe to be true or not. But I don't know if that's a definitive fact, Cali Cow. But I mean, I hear what you're saying, because that's something that comes up a lot, especially on the Instagram page that I have, just because that's a page that's been around longer, and we talk about more, a broader range of topics, and that comes up a lot. You know, uh, Junius Edwards says, "To the government, the public servants are engaged in treason." I don't know. I don't know if you could say they're engaged in treason. I mean, it sounds like their constituents are asking for it. So, I think that there's a yeah. I don't know. I don't know if you'd say that they're engaged in treason because their constituents are asking for it. Junius says the people must respond, demanding respect from the servants who serve them. Yeah, but again, so this is the thing. It's like, this is, people voted them into office, right? And so, and the MP, and forgive me, I'm forgetting his name. I'll put all that in the comments. I mean, in the description below afterwards. But he said that this is what his constituents are asking for, right? So, this is not necessarily a situation where they are going against what the people are asking for. Now, there are many groups, that are speaking out against this, but based on that survey, that was 2014, it wasn't 2020, so we don't know how recent, and we don't know what group of the population was interviewed, but 90% of the people who took that poll um, said that they agree with anti-LGBTQ laws, right? So, that is something that is factually correct. That's what we do know. We do also know that the people who are introducing these laws haven't been outwardly denounced by the large swaths of the population. I can tell you, like I said, I'm in the office, and I've heard some discussions around it, and I'm not hearing people defying or saying they're against it. So I definitely think that it's a much more nuanced discussion than that, and I think that there's more to it than just removing them from office. So Kali Cal says Europeans were practicing, same-sex relationships before Africans. Again, I think that's another one that we're not 100% sure on. I mean, I'd hate to be disputing everybody on either side, but like I said, I try to be as objective as possible here, right? Like, I think the idea is that, there are groups of people that were more outwardly open to discussing or doing these kinds of things. I don't think that means that they were the first to do it. I've looked into this a bit. I mean, it's kind of hard because, of course, the history is written by, and he said study Alexander the Great. So Alexander the Great is not the earliest person in human history, though, right? So when we're talking about ancient Egyptians going back thousands of years, and there are some people who say that they practice it, then that might refute or dispute what you're saying. So I think that there's nuance. It's a nuanced discussion, right? This is a nuanced discussion. All right, let me get into some more of the comments or questions. And again, I'm trying to just take an objective view, right? Facts only is what I'm looking at here. So what do we have? Just Curious said, truth is we know these exist and do know people within our communities who are, and we cohabit. Problem is that public push to have it accepted. That will be difficult for most Ghanaians to accept. Yeah, I think I think what you're saying here is what I'm hearing around, right? Somebody who I work with said something along the lines of, I don't want this stuff pushed on me. She said, her little phrase was shoved down my throat, is what she said. She didn't want it shoved down her throat. And so I think that was her viewpoint, and it seems to be the viewpoint that I'm hearing from some other people here is that they feel like that people who are advocating are forcing something on them. I think that it's tough for me to see that viewpoint, though, because what exactly are they forcing those people to do is what I don't necessarily understand. Maybe there's some examples that I'm just not thinking of, but I'm just not really clear on like what is actually this community, LGBTQ community, forcing those other people to do. And there may be some examples here that I'm not thinking of. Sorry, my phone is ringing. That's probably my niece calling. Um, I haven't gotten into my family with you guys. At some point, we'll do like the whole family let you guys know more about my family. I'll probably go live with a couple of my sisters um, in Sierra Leone at the end of this year, if they're down to go live with me, because I'd love to like give you guys more of like the family history and all of that. But back to this. So yeah, I mean, I hear that, and this what just confused is saying. I think it seems like the sentiment that I'm hearing here. Um, Okay, so Mr. Bounce Los Angeles says even if that particular community is not able to get outward, they'll probably all go to the Ivory Coast because they're unlikely to be in Burkina Faso. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing though, the one argument about the idea of leaving where you are because circumstances don't allow for you to thrive, right? Is one that presupposes that those people have the finances to do so, right? This was an argument we had for something completely different when I was in the U.S. with some of my friends who are a little bit wealthier, who've come from like wealthy families, right? Um, when they would talk about like harassment in the workplace, and they would just be like, "Just get another job. Like it's that easy. Why would you stay at that job when they treat you like that?" And it was hard for them to conceptualize the fact that there are certain people that they don't have another option for another job, right? Now that's not the exact same thing here, but I'm just using that as a parallel. I think that that also matters in situations like this, right, where we're talking about people who, I don't know what the average income here in Ghana is, but I know in Sierra Leone it's about $75 a month. In Ghana, it's probably a little higher. That's average, right? So if you're thinking about that, right, plane transportation is very difficult. Even getting in a bus and moving. Where do you live? Who do you like? All those things have to be considered, and so it's not as easy to just move away and go somewhere else. And also, it's not um, everything else about your culture, and you think you recognize and understand and know, and going to a completely different country, especially a country like, let's say, Cote d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast, which is francophone, where Ghana is anglophone, so English is spoken here. Um, yeah, so that is the question I think that you have, right? Is can someone potentially go somewhere else to escape potentially or to be able to live their true selves, right? All right, let's see what else we got. NKB says, why do foreign ambassadors join an advocacy that is considered on foreign land that shows they have no respect for our laws? Oh, so I'm guessing there are some foreign. Oh, okay, because I mentioned that the UN members of the UN denounced it. I don't even know if those members of the UN are actually ambassadors in Ghana. They might have been because there were some members. Yeah, I mean that is a good point. Again, you are in someone else's country, right? So you're denouncing their belief systems. Um, yeah, it's a tough one. I think the world has decided on councils and agreements for different things, right? What's considered a human rights violation? What's considered not okay to be able to do? And when certain things seem to veer close to one of those things, people start speaking out about it, right? And so that's the thing that you have to think about, right? Is that like there are across most countries in the UN, there are commonly agreed upon practices and laws and rules of engagement, right? And so with those, you have people who, if they see something that they feel like is potentially violating that, they speak out against it, right? And so maybe they're not always the best at articulating why they're doing it, and sometimes they're just doing it because they think that there's an audience who wants to hear it. I do think a lot of people can be disingenuous when it comes to these things, but I do think that does happen a lot, where people from one place try to tell another place how they should live and what they should be doing. That is something that is not uniquely American, but the United States has done that for a long time in other countries and has messed up a lot of countries. And so, I think that that's something to consider here. Is like how should other people from other countries engage with something like this, especially since it's not technically law yet, right? It's just a bill. I think once it becomes law, maybe, but I guess what they're trying to do is prevent it from becoming law. And I guess you'll just have to see what the Ghanaians decide to vote on, if they decide to. I guess if the I don't know if it comes to a vote for people or just people in parliament, but once they gets to a floor vote, what they decide to do to move forward. Okay. Just Confused says, oh wow, there's more. The addition is mainly to curb the advocacy because of the rise in it. Okay, so again, the addition of this new bill is to curb the advocacy, which you do see that they're saying if you advocate for it, you also are deemed criminally whatever, you're breaking the law as well. MKB says, Jack Jackson, who do you think you? Whoa, okay. Um, let's let's keep it civil, guys. I think I missed a few things, so let me go back up here and see what we got here. Um, okay, what did Jack Jackson? It's ironic that in general, Africa has a history of the same attraction. It was not until the Europeans came that it made it wrong. Now the Europeans woke up and they said they were wrong. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about that. That's another one. That one, I can't say that that is true or not. But I think that, okay, so I think this is where NKB said, what she said. And now NK, or what they said, sorry. NKB says the US has the most abuse. So yeah, so NKB, that's a point that the minister brought up too. That the most abuse to LGBTQ happens in the United States, although the United States allows for more rights for LGBTQ. But you have to also remember though that the United States is more generally a violent country, right? Like just overall, the United States is, like I said, top 10 most violent countries in the world. And so, many disputes end in death or dismemberment or just like long-term physical traumatic events, right? And so, yeah, so I mean, I think the correlation, so I think what happens sometimes is people say, if you do something like this, that might increase um, the negative impact and violence on LGBTQ, right? And then the argument for people who agree with the bill would say the United States has the most liberal laws as it pertains to LGBTQ, but also has the highest, um, you know, uh, violence against LGBTQ community. Um, yeah, I don't know if they're inversely related, right? I think the idea is that the United States is just a very violent country, like overall, if you're looking at the numbers, not everywhere, not all the time, right? But just overall, it just is that way. Um, and so I like what Mr. Bounce Los Angeles said. Even if we disagree in this chat, please keep it civil. We are all still family. Let's have a mature conversation. It's all love, black love. I like that statement because that's very true. That's what I said at the beginning. Let's keep it civil. I want to make sure that, like, because this is a controversial topic, and I understand that there are a lot of viewpoints on this, and I want to make sure that everyone gets heard. But I also want to make sure that we respect each other, respect one another, right? Like at the end of the day, we're all trying to be better and do better. And so let's also be like civil on the chat. I mean, I'm not putting everything up that I'm reading here because I want to make sure that we stay civil. So let me see what else we got. Um okay, so NKB basically says if people who happen to be LGBTQ have no respect for the Constitution, why should they be respected? Now, this is also something that I've heard as an argument in the United States as well, too, right? The idea that um, you're choosing this life, which is completely against the majority viewpoint, right? Now, I've had this conversation earlier today with someone, and there is a belief system that some people do choose the lifestyle. I mean, I don't know how that would be. In my mind, I don't know why anybody would choose something more difficult, a more difficult lifestyle, but some people do believe that you can choose this lifestyle. I can tell you, I know someone who was born this way, right? So that leads to the other thing, which is conversion therapy that they are talking about as part of this bill, or as part of a solution here, which I didn't get too deep into. But from what I understand, portions of it is hormonal. Um, and I don't have all the details on it, so I don't even want to try to speak to it intelligently. But there is conversion therapy brought up as part of this, not the same as what you might have heard of that's happening in the U.S., where there's been some conversion therapy methods that were used in the U.S. for some time, that really had some detrimental effects on certain people. But they are talking about conversion therapy as a potential, like what they, I guess, what they would consider a solution for this. Um, yeah, I mean, the thing is that I don't think that it's and this is okay, so this is a think, let me not say I don't think or I feel, let's stick to the facts. From what I have seen and enough of what I have read is that there are at least some, we can't say all, we can't say, I don't know if it's most, right, because it's just hard to do that, but that are born that way. And so how do you handle those, that people that are born that way, when you have a law like this that restricts them from just how they were born, right? Like I said, I know someone who was born that way. I can tell you from the very beginning, it was pretty obvious, um, from the very beginning. And I know it's hard to say, how can you say it's obvious? I mean, I don't even want to go into the details of that because I feel like by doing that, I might potentially um, out that person. So I'm trying to be diplomatic here and trying not to give too much information about who that person is. But I can tell you from the beginning it was pretty obvious, and um, I know after talking to them that if they had the choice, they would not have been LGBTQ. Now they won't change their life for anything. They say they don't, they love who themselves and all that kind of stuff, but they said life has been harder for them because of this, just in certain aspects of their life. Some people might disagree with that, but certain aspects of their lives have been made more difficult, like because they're living in secret with people that they love and that they know, right? And so they don't feel like they can be fully themselves, right, around people that they love and that they know. So that's what I'll say about that. All right, what else do we have here? Okay, so Duma says, and I think Ali Kav said there's no homosexuality depicted in Egyptian art. Many people have misinterpreted a certain drawing. Okay, that's fair. I don't have the exact drawings. I just know that this is part of the argument that comes up. I will say there's also Greek drawings, maybe one or two that are that kind of are put in the same realm. But I think what we should probably do is maybe I should do some research on that and maybe do a follow up in the comments and in the description below about where that might have come from. Um, so yeah, let's see that. SM says, the day Europeans will convince Arabs to accept homosexuality, then Ghana will accept it too. Yeah, I mean, look, there are very many communities around the world that do not openly accept it in terms of their public laws and what they allow to publicly. Whether they privately accept it, things like that, that's a different story. I just had a conversation with someone who had been in other places like Turkey, for instance, where in some places it's more privately accepted but not publicly, just because of the fact that they are, very conservative nation state. But yeah. Um, so NKB is asking for someone to be able to prove which people in Ghana was doing this before Europeans came. And yeah, I don't know if anybody can prove that. So you may be right. It may not have happened, or it may have happened, right? I don't know if there's anybody who can prove that, but I understand what NKB is saying is just like the thought process of there being okay, I guess okay. So I think what's happening now is that the chat is getting a little out of control. So, like I said, let's try to keep this civil, guys. I mean, it's not too bad, but I see like this, like it's arguments going back and forth. We want to try to keep this civil. Let's stick to, I said, let's stick to facts. Let's be objective, and let's try to keep it so that we are talking to each other with respect, right? I want to make sure that we're not here bashing each other, right? Um, yeah. So I mean, so some people say I don't want Accra to turn into San Francisco. Again, I mean, that's not what that's. I don't know if that's a productive part of the discussion, right? Because I think there are different elements to this. I think that has to be taken into consideration, right? Because there's a difference between living how it was and introducing new laws to constrict, right? So yeah, so I think we just have to be careful there. Um, so Mary Shy says hello, hello. You stepped into a debate today. There's been quite a bit of debating happening in the comments today. Um, so NKB says, why is it that most people that speak against white supremacy use organization and systems to silence the majority voice to validate their existence? Um, yeah, I mean, I guess some people do that. I don't know who those people are. But yeah, I mean, there are probably people who do that. Um, yeah, I think that if you, I think that, well, I do think that there's one thing, right? There are some people that believe in the sense that an injustice, a threat to injustice anywhere. Man, I do not want to mess up Martin Luther King's quote, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Is a threat to and yeah, everywhere, right? Whatever it is. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I definitely butchered the Martin Luther King quote. And so what that means is that some people look at it as all potential injustices um, should not be there, right? And so sometimes you do have people who fight against the oppression of a particular race, who also then fight against the oppression of a sexual orientation, or I should say, against the oppression of LGBTQ. I don't know if sexual orientation is the right framing, the way you should say it, but so yeah, I mean that is a thing that happens, right? And so I think some people they don't like both being talked about within the same context, and so that is a personal belief, and you can decide not to follow those people if that's what you believe. I mean, that's the great thing about freedom of speech and these platforms, right? You can decide if you want to follow those people, if you don't want to follow those people. Um, but yeah, okay. So Mr. Bounce Los Angeles said, in America, the media is sort of promoting it in most TV series, commercials, etc. So it seems forced in that sense. Imagine having a black family or a Mexican woman um, in darn near every show. That's probably what she meant by forced. Yeah, I mean, look, I think the idea of media is it's a profit making machine, right? Like, you know, um, for instance, soap operas, right? You guys know why they're called soap operas? It's because they were just to string you along in between commercials. Soap was to get people to buy soap, right? Like dishwashing soap, house soap, right? So it was soap operas were not really meant for people to like really watch the shows. They were meant to just be breaks in between commercials, right? And so television and media is about making money. And a couple of things they've discovered over time helps them to generate revenue. One is certain types of inclusion, including certain aspects of the world. It includes certain demographics who might be higher net worth or who might be more willing to spend more money, right? It's just been as of recent that they've discovered an all black cast can make hundreds of millions of dollars with Black Panther, right? And so you see that affecting Hollywood studios starting to want to make more black content. You also know that there are people in prominent positions in Hollywood, but also people who are consumers that are LGBTQ. And so the media and television has started to think, all right, we will probably get more viewership if we're more inclusive of the community in our content. And so that really is what it comes down to when it comes to media and television, right? Like it's about making money. And I'm not necessarily the foremost expert in it. I did happen to work at a company for 4 years that is in that space, but I also have been a heavy consumer of television since 1984. And so I can tell you, I've seen patterns, and I do think that those patterns are based on what's working. A show like Modern Family has been one of the highest rated television shows. I think the last 10 years it's been on the air. And so, I think when you see something that seems to be working for them, they win Emmys, multiple Emmys throughout the years. I think other TV shows are going to start to take part in that. And so I also see though what this person is saying, where they said maybe they feel forced because now they're they're seeing it, but they also have the opportunity to also change the channel, watch something else. That's something that you do have the opportunity to do. So I think that there's always like the argument for that, right? But yeah, I mean, I think that that's probably what they meant. Probably, yeah, by seeing it in media or seeing it being talked about, that might have been why they felt like it could potentially be forced. Um, so um, so Okay, so the argument, there's another argument again about like the size of a smaller community versus the larger group, right? And this has definitely been an argument for a while in regards to LGBT. There's also an argument in regards to the pandemic, right? Like I've heard this argument being stated that um, why should we all wear masks, or why do we need to be vaccinated, and other things like that, because there is a small percentage that's the most vulnerable to this particular thing. Um, and that's one of the arguments, right? That's the argument for one of the arguments for this here is that because it's a small percentage of the population, why should this population have equal rights to the larger percentage of the population? I also realize here in Ghana, the LGBTQ community is not as influential in as many positions of power here in the United States, and so it makes it more difficult for them to be able to have a voice. Right? It's like in the U.S., you know, you have a voice if you are more powerful, or if someone who is in a group that's powerful advocates for you, then you have a voice, right? And things can be changed, and things can be done. And so, yeah, I think but that is one of the arguments. And so it seems to be one of the arguments from local Ghanaians here is why should the rest of the group have to even deal with this small subset of the population? um that's a tough argument, right? There's probably two different groups, there's two different opinions here on that. Like some people just believe that a small group shouldn't have any say. I just think it gets really dicey because there have been large groups of people that have been wrong previously, and we can go back in history and look at things that they've been wrong about, and then they've also persecuted smaller groups based on that, right? And so from my perspective, I feel like, and it just I should say, from my perspective, it just seems that the thing that makes the most sense is that every group should have equal rights, but there should be things in place to ensure that those who want to take advantage of it negatively are not able to. And so that's my viewpoint, right? So like when it comes to certain laws about, like, let's say sports or bathrooms and things like that, where people are the most nervous about, this seem to be the things that come up the most. I think you have to just make sure that there are things in place that don't allow for people to those people on the margins who have ill intent to come in and to pervert the system and mess it up for the other people, right? And so that's just my belief system, and that's my viewpoint. So to me, I don't necessarily agree that just because they're a minority, they should not have a say or equal rights. But that is an argument that very many people have, and it pertains to a lot of different things, not just this particular topic. Um, So NKB, okay, so this is one thing that NKB said, and so this is an important thing because this is also a topic of discussion a lot, and that is people equating African people or Africans in America and their suffering to sexuality, because again, this is one of those things where it comes down to what a lot of people believe is that in some cases people believe that it's a choice, right? So it's like it's not my choice to be black, right? Um, and everyone sees me as black, so I can't walk around in the world and not be black. Also, and a woman that I worked with happened to be part of the LGBT community, and what she said is that she could present herself as straight. Nobody had to know she was gay, right? And so she said that it doesn't equate. Um, the black struggle doesn't equate to what she was dealing with, because she had the opportunity to she could what did she say? I can't remember the exact words. She could present as straight, she was saying, which I felt, okay, that makes sense. That's a good point. I don't know if everyone can, but I'm sure they probably can if they happen to be LGBTQ. But I mean, she also felt that, like, even though she could, she didn't want to, right? And so, but she told me it wasn't her choice. She was born that way, right? And so there's that. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's some of the argument, is that some people feel like there's an unequal equation of the two. My question or comment to that, though, is what about someone who is black and LGBTQ, right? How do we look at those folks? Okay. So Jose Cruz says, do you think it's healthy for LGBTQ to raise children? I think if they are healthy people, right? Like in any case, is it healthy to be raised by a single parent? If that is a healthy individual, is it healthy to be raised in a two family household if they're in a two parent household, if they're healthy individuals? I think it really depends on the people, right? Regardless of LGBTQ or not, I think parenting is very difficult, and it requires some serious patience, and also some learning, and I don't think it's for everyone. But I don't see any issue, in my opinion, with LGBTQ people raising a child. That's not, in my opinion. I don't believe that there is an issue. I think that there is no shortage of children who don't have parents, and it is, in my opinion, actually, let me even go back to facts. In factually, in general, um, those children who grow up in a system are far less likely to succeed in the world than if they grow up in a household where you have two people, or whatever the household situation is, able to give their full attention to those children. When you grow up in a system, a lot of children slip through the cracks. You might have 12 kids in one home with one person overseeing them, and so I think, not every child that's adopted by LGBTQ would be in the system otherwise. But what I'm saying is, you know I don't see it as unhealthy for them to be raised by LGBTQ. I actually have someone that I know who was raised by two mothers, and they seem to be a very well-adjusted, very good human being, right? Again, that's someone I probably don't want to mention how I know them, or who they are, because I don't know if they want their business out there. But yeah, I mean, and they seem like a very well-adjusted individual. So yeah, I think that depends. I mean, but it depends on the people, right? I mean, there are toxic people no matter what your background is, and so I don't think any toxic people should raise children. But I think if you are well-adjusted, patient, you're willing to learn as a parent, um, I think that's what I mean. I think that's how I look at it. Um, so NKB says, why should someone reproduce if you have access to them when you engage in a lifestyle that does not support the making of a family? Yeah, I mean, there's another argument again, right? Like, the idea that they shouldn't. But again, I think this comes back to whether or not you and there's differences of opinions on this, and also some tough to find facts on this. But if you're born that way, what other option do you have, right? I think that's one question that comes up. um let's see, what do we got, in the Instagram lives? Let's see if there's anything else. What are Ghanaian family values? Are they defined by the law? I think they are defined by the bill. By the bill. Remember, it's not a law as of yet. It's a bill being introduced. I think it is defined, if I'm not mistaken, and I could not find it in the quick skim that I did, because I decided to do this topic literally like 4 hours ago. But from what I understand, it's what you would consider traditional family values, which is considered in the world, like, because I think that that's pretty much the same everywhere around the world. If you hear like the right in the U.S. and also just very many people in the U.S. believe a traditional family values in some other places in the world is mother, father, married in the household, um, you know, heterosexual family with children, right? I think that that's traditional family values, right? I think outside of that, you start to um, look at what they consider non-traditional family values. I hope that answers the question. Oh, okay. And so I just got help with the Martin Luther King quote that I butchered earlier, and I need a chance to redeem myself, so I'm going to say it now. Injustice anywhere is a threat to injustice everywhere. That was what I was trying to say. You guys knew what I meant, but that's what I was trying to say. But yeah, I do think that that's why some people advocate for these two different groups, right? A group of people that are racially oppressed, and then a people who are oppressed based on sexual orientation. Um, so, KB. I'm debating whether or not I should put your message up on the screen because what you said does speak to a question about the transgender community, which is also a part of this bill because it does talk about what I think what they're calling like reassignment surgery. Um, so okay, I'm gonna put it up. You know, this is I think it's a good topic to discuss, but I just want to be very clear that like let's try not to do like I want to be more. Yeah, okay. I'll put it up. Okay, so Ghanaian family. Okay, so that sorry, not that. If a white person says, "I now want to identify as a black person," will America recognize him as such or them as such? So this is something that's come up before, right? So there are people now that are saying they're transracial, right? And so now this is the slippery slope argument on the opposite end, right? Where people say once you start allowing the rights for these people, then you have people in these other places trying to do it as well, right? So like some people will say I'm transracial now, like Rachel Dolezal, right? If you guys remember, um, and there was a documentary called The Rachel Divide about Rachel Dolezal, and it went through a whole story. She was part of the NAACP, I think, in Washington State. It was found that she was actually white. Her parents had adopted some black children. She had I think a child or two children with a black guy. And she had been posing or she married a black guy. I'm not really sure, but she posed as black, right? And she says she identifies as black as well. And so I think that question comes to bear with transgender. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer to that question, right? Because this is something that I am not at all educated enough on to be able to speak intelligently. All I can say is this, you know in the United States, one thing about the United States that most of us like about the United States, and that was one of the things that I really liked about it, was freedom of speech, and which finds its way in a lot of different areas. But the idea is that whatever I do if it doesn't personally impact you, then it should be fine to do. And I think that that is how we should, if we're going to, and this is what brings up what I mentioned before about making sure that there aren't people who are going to try to take advantage of these laws. They should be reprimanded in specific ways so that other people don't try to do that. Um, so, so yeah, I mean, to answer this question, go back to this question, is I don't know the answer. I don't know if there are going to be other kinds of communities that consider themselves trans something if that happens. I don't know. I don't know. I would just say that as long as it doesn't negatively impact someone else, take away opportunities from them, physically or mentally, negatively impact someone else. I mean, I don't know. Should it even matter? Right? Should it matter? I don't know. I don't know. NKB says Ghanaian family values is defined by the custodian of customs, which is the chief and implemented by the government. Yes. Okay. Yeah. I did read that somewhere. So, so yeah, and if you guys have questions on that, you can Google that. SM says, how about the Arabs? Can America and Europeans talk to them about accepting? I guess what she's saying is accepting gay people. I don't know that the U.S. is even talking to Ghana about this, right? I don't know if that's even happening. There are some, like I said, some people in the UN that are speaking out about this, but I don't know if there's like public outrage in the U.S. or people in the U.S. government talking about this. There may be. I haven't seen it. If you guys have, you guys let me know. Um, oh, shout out to Danielle. Haven't spoken to you in a while. Congratulations on everything. Looks like you're loving life in Atlanta. Shout out to you. If you're still on, she joined for 2 seconds. Okay, so let's see. NKB is saying, let's see, if the line of identity is blurred by how someone feels, then how can someone make a not make claim to culture or race if they feel they were supposed to be born as such? Yeah, I think this goes back to the same thing as where I said I don't know. I don't know. Don't got an answer for you on this one. Because again, this can be something that can happen. OD99 says plus. Oh, so somebody was asking what does the plus stand for? Tabasco was asking what does the plus stand for, and OD99 says plus anything they want to add. It does mean plus if you don't feel like you're included in the LGBTQ portion, right? Because there are different shades of different things, right? So yeah. Okay, so there's not really freedom of speech in America. Example, Nick Cannon in his statement on Jewish people. Actually, so this is an interesting one. So there's two different things, right? There's freedom of speech, which is something that the government and the Constitution allows for. Wait, amendment to the Constitution allows for. And then there's private enterprise that can make a decision based on, so you have freedom of speech, you don't have freedom of consequences of that speech, right? So and by the way, Nick is back at Wild 'N Out. Wild 'N Out season 14, I think it is on right now, as far as I know. And MTV brought him back and he's all good, right? So I definitely think that this is one of those things that they have to be very clear. There's a delineation between the two, right? So like there's always been freedom of speech. Now, where you have to be careful is you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, right? So freedom of speech does have its limits in terms of the Constitution, because if you're in a crowded theater, and that's the example that I was given when I was learning about the Constitution when I was like, I don't know, 9. They were like, because if you yell fire in a crowded theater and everybody gets up and runs, people might get trampled, people might get hurt. And so that is why you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. But freedom of speech is absolutely the case in the United States. You can say whatever you want, as it's just that in terms of you're not free to, you don't have freedom of consequence, right? Now, so Tabasco's saying, you know, Nick Cannon got everything back after he was forced to apologize. Yeah, but again, freedom of consequence, you have freedom of speech, you don't have freedom of consequence. So you can say you can say whatever you want, you just can't you just have to deal with the consequence. NKB says if you leave the door open, anyone can lay claim to anything. That's the slippery slope argument that's been out there. NKB says, is there freedom of speech in America? Anyone, when you speak your mind and these issues, you're canceled. So again, freedom of speech is different from freedom of consequence, right? Again, you can say whatever you want as long as it's not like yelling fire in a crowded theater. But private enterprises are allowed to make any decisions that they want with their employees or people who are in partnership with them. Now, they might make those decisions based on public discourse and what's happening in the public conversation, but you can absolutely say whatever you want in the United States of America. That's definitely true today, just as much as it ever has been. So that I think I would debate anybody on, because I think that is actually the case. You can say absolutely whatever you want in the United States. Again, except for like the example I gave, right? Okay, this has been a spirited conversation. A lot of ideas, a lot of back and forth. I see um, back and forth on the comments. I just want to see if there was anything that I should put up that I haven't. There's been some communication back and forth between the folks. Um, yeah, people for and against. Um, all right, let's just take a quick poll while we're here. And this might be controversial too. After you guys have heard the poll, you've heard this discussion. How many people agree with the bill and how many people disagree with the bill? I want you to put in the comments below. If you agree with the bill that says that you should either be fined or spend jail time, because that's what the bill says. You should either be fined and or have jail time if you not only are LGBTQ and you are found to be, or if you support in any way someone LGBTQ. So if you guys agree or disagree with that, go ahead and put it in the comments. I want to see where everyone is. So just write agree or disagree with the bill. Okay. So we got to disagree. Miss P disagrees. And just so you guys know where I stand too, I think it's pretty clear, but I actually disagree. But whether I agree or disagree doesn't matter. But I actually disagree. Okay, Jose Cruz disagrees. Okay. NKB agrees. I know that is obvious one. I knew that from jump. You agree. NKB is obviously Ghanaian and reps for Ghanaian traditional values, as I can see. Anybody else want to weigh in? Agree or disagree? KB is the only reason why LGBTQ are alive and they're making claims is their right to do whatever they want is because their parents weren't. I'm not really sure I got that. KB. NKB says 93% of Ghanaians agree. Yeah, so I cited that poll that was done in 2014 that said 90% of Ghanaians agree. So yeah, I think that is factually correct, at least in terms of these polls that are done. And then just anecdotally, when I'm out in the world here, when it comes to this topic, I see that. OD99 says I'm not pro. Messed up the acronym completely. I think that was a Dave Chappelle joke that you threw in here. But let's try to be respectful, guys. But I think that they should not be fined or jailed. Okay. So Yorty Francis says it seems to me like gay rights is now more powerful than any other right. Um, Again, right? When you have advocates in a particular group that have a level of power or people who are advocating for them who have power, then that determines your power, right? So when it comes to racial insensitivity, right, there are certain groups, and they might be religious groups too, that have more say and there could be more negative consequences for people who speak out against them, right? So there are certain communities, and I have to be very careful with how I say this because I don't want to come off as offensive to any particular group, but there are certain communities and certain groups that are who have folks in their group that are in positions of power. So that means that they tend to have more power and are able to exert more, exert that power in different ways. So we have another one that agrees. So Yordi Francis, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name right, says you agree. Wow, I did not expect there'd be so many or there'd be people that agreed. Um, but this is an interesting one because I wasn't really sure, but I mean I do know a good number of Ghanaians do follow the channel and subscribe. So from what I understand, it looks like more Ghanaians than don't do agree. So yeah, and I think it also happens to be too your context, right? Like, I've been all around the world in so many different places. I've lived in different cities, and so I've engaged with different kinds of people. And so for me, it's probably helped me to see other viewpoints right, than just my own personal preconceived notions before I met them, right? Yeah, so I think that that's probably why I am that way. Which I'm also not saying that that doesn't mean you guys haven't traveled. I'm just saying I've lived in cities where they're much more liberal cities. So to me, I've just met people who happen to be part of the community, the LGBTQ community, and for me, it helped to open my eyes to what potentially their plights might be and their viewpoint, right? Um, Jose Cruz says, organize for the rights you want. Okay. Um, NKB says, but why do we have to shed our blood to be recognized? But these people get to not only be recognized, but they think they compare their suffering with us. Again, this comes down to people in those groups having power, right? In certain groups having power. So any any group that has members of their group that are in power, financially, who have political power, they are going to have more things happening on their behalf for the most part, right? And so that's just how it works, right? So and if you don't have people in prominent positions of power, then you're going to have advocates for other groups do that on your behalf. And so that's just kind of how it has to be. But it doesn't mean that there hasn't been people in the LGBT community that have not shed blood to be recognized. There have been plenty of times where many people in that community have shed blood to be recognized, for sure. Now, the part about equating that with the Black struggle, I think that's a different thing, because as I said, I spoke to someone in the LGBT community, and her viewpoint was they are different. Um, I don't like to try to one up other people, like our struggle is harder than your struggle kind of thing. I just prefer a world where there isn't that. You know what I'm saying? Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that that's one of the things that have to be taken into consideration is that any marginalized group, as long as they have people who are in, like I said, in positions of power, financially, in a place where they can affect major change for organizations and companies, that allows them to wield that power, right? You saw that with people of color well, Black people in particular in the U.S. when there were certain things that were happening that we, for the most part, as a collective, were not happy about, and so collectively, with our income, we decided not to work with certain companies, and those companies started making changes, or they were put on alert, and either retracted statements or put in some changes. And so it definitely does happen in that way. It's really about finances at the end of the day, in my opinion. It's about who's in power and who has the finances. That determines whether or not a group um, gets the rights and things like that. Um, so yeah, okay, all right, guys. This has been a spirited discussion. We've been on here for an hour and 38 minutes. I didn't think we'd be going this long, but there's been a lot of interesting viewpoints. Um, yeah, I tried my best to be as objective as possible, but also, hear the different arguments, explain them how I hear them and how I see them, um, and just kind of talk through it with everyone. So I hope you guys found this interesting. It was definitely an interesting discussion for me. Um, no, next time I do something like this, a controversial topic like this, I probably should have someone else on with me, so that they can also add their own thoughts and ideas. And probably, if I'm going to do that, I don't know if it makes sense to have someone from that community on, because some of you guys are not very supportive. So I don't know if I want to have a person from the LGBT community on to discuss it. But if I can, I might, and I'll have them take a look at some of these comments to see if they'd be fine doing it. But maybe that's a good idea, right? Maybe it's a good idea to have someone like that. I also want to do the topic of reparations. So now to switch gears, just in terms of another topic. Okay, here's actually, let's do this before we go. Now that we're closing out this topic and we still have people on, let me know what you guys want me to talk about in the coming lives. I'm looking for topics that you guys want to have covered. Um, Reparations is one. Maybe we can look at some of the reparations bills in the US. I know most of this is supposed to be about my move to the continent and what I'm experiencing and seeing and hearing about and the news that's happening here. But reparations does directly impact some Africans and someone like me, because right, I don't know where I will fall in place with that. Like, would I get reparations? Would I not? How do they determine it? Right? Those are all things you have to think about. So, okay, what topics? What topics, guys? Before we go, what topics do you guys want to hear from me? And that includes you guys on Instagram. There's only a few of you guys left. Um, so older than, I don't know what that says. Older than Mathusula, Mathusala. Older. Can you ask questions here? You absolutely can ask questions here. I don't know if you're still on, but ask a question. I totally missed that. I'm sorry. Okay. Miss P says it's a good one, Joe. I'm sleeping from working all day, but I had to be part of this. Thank you. No problem. Thank you for joining, Miss P. OD99 says reparations, unity, disunity between the continent and the diaspora. That's one. That's definitely one that's come up. Matthew Sala is the name. Okay. Reparations is a good one. YMCMB 1955 wants to talk about justice. Okay. So by the way, so you guys remember a few weeks back I did a joint live with Destination Africa Group TV, and I talked about my experience with the NYPD, and I thought that that was a really good topic. And they just released a video, and I told and we had a really good conversation. I haven't even watched it yet, but they have great content, so I know it's going to be good. So what I want to do is share the link in the live for you guys. So you guys should check it out. Let me find it really quickly. I'm actually going to watch it as soon as we are done here. But I definitely think you guys should check it out. So you guys you guys get a little bit about my experience with the NYPD. Not some not so great experiences a couple times. So I want to share it with you guys, and I want you guys to check out this interview I did with them. It's here. So don't go to it now. Copy it and paste it later. But go check out that interview right there. Um, da, 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 da. Here's a topic that Jose said. Okay. Can an Afro interracial relationship be pro-black? So you want me to cover that as a topic, which somebody mentioned earlier, Dr. Umar. This is one he would say is a no, right? Duh, 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 duh. So I do know interracial couple, and I think he considers himself pro-black. Um, you know, I think she would consider herself an advocate and an ally. But I don't know if she would consider herself pro-black. Maybe. I think maybe she would. But that's a good question, right? Can an interracial relationship, Afro interracial relationship, be pro-black? I think it depends on the people, but it's tough, right? Anyway, that's a good topic. All right, I'll take that as a topic for sure. So what we got is Afro interracial relationships. Can they be pro-black? We talked about unification, disunification of the continent and Africans on the continent. We also talked about one other one is reparations that people want to talk about. So these are all good topics. Is marijuana dangerous now that it's been bred for higher THC content? Um, that should be a good topic. Yeah, that's a good topic. Is it dangerous? Well, first of all, the word marijuana is should not be used to describe cannabis. I just found out that that's a whole nother plant that was like a wild weed that was found in Mexico, and that was all part of the propaganda by Harry Anslinger and people before that and around that time to push people away from the use of cannabis. So when I talk about cannabis, I call it cannabis. But yeah, that's another good topic. I'm just taking notes right now because these are good topics for sure. Um, I'm a pro cannabis advocate, so you're gonna hear me talk about that. So yeah, let's see. Yeah, any other topics? Right. So to persecute Mexicans and black people, right? Yeah, calling it marijuana. Um, okay. All right. So we got a couple of topics. These are good ones. I will definitely be putting a list together, and over the next few weeks. Okay, criminal justice in Ghana. That's an interesting one. I have a chief legal or head of legal, so maybe I can speak to her um, and see if there's anything that she can provide in terms of this topic. Anything in specific, anything in particular you want to talk about when you say criminal justice in Ghana? I want to make sure that I'm covering any particular topics you would want to hear. Just the system in general. Is it fair? Is it unfair? How it works? Is that what you're saying? Can Afro international relationships be pro black? That's a good one. Okay. Any other ones before we go? Because someone brought up drugs. Okay. That's why you're saying, okay, criminal justice. Okay. I do know that cannabis is illegal here in Ghana. And quick fact for those of you who are still on, there's still a couple of you on here. You want to hear something interesting? And we'll talk about this in more detail. But I actually got stopped by the police here, and I might have had a small amount of cannabis on my person, on me, and I got shaken down basically, and I had to give a bribe to be able to go free. So that's interesting. Um, that I was not expecting that. I mean, um, counter arguments or different point of view could be dope. On what? A guest with a counter argument. Oh, okay. For whatever I'm talking about, a guest with a counter argument. Okay. Um, yeah, that could be interesting. I do debate frequently with the head of legal at the company I work at. So that might actually be interesting. We could definitely talk about that. Her and I we debate pretty often. Miss P is saying, "Wow, yeah, you stayed on long enough to hear about that." There's still a few people on. Yeah, that happened. That happened. And it ended up being too much. I mean, I'm told now that I could have just given them like the equivalent to like $20, and I would have been fine, or even less than that. But I ended up giving away over like $120 because that's how much I had on me at the time. Because I was at the time I was buying some furniture, buying something for my new apartment. I was coming to my new apartment, and I had cannabis on me, and they emptied my bag out, and they were like, it was a whole thing. They even put cuffs on me. And anyway, we'll talk about this at a later time. We'll talk about this at a later time. But yeah, that happened. It was a thing. It was a thing. All right, cool. So we got a few topics. Making sure I have a guest who has a counter argument to mine. Jose Cruz, that happened to you in Mexico. Man, that's tough. Mexico is a scary place. Especially like certain areas of Mexico. You do not want to get pulled over by the police. Not fun. In the US too. Okay. So criminal justice in Ghana. Can an Afro international relationship be pro-black? Making sure I have a guest with a counter argument. Unity and disunity, and reparations. I think these are all topics. Jose is asking Odie Odie 95 says the authentic El Chapo. Yeah, yeah. Jose Cruz said, did they have the guns out? Yeah, so they naturally have guns out. So these were like more like military style guys. So they had like, the AK-47. They were So what they were doing is, they have checkpoints here. So it was a checkpoint, and they stopped me at a checkpoint. And it just so happened to be my unlucky day where they asked me to get out of the vehicle and to empty my stuff. Anyway, I'm gonna do a whole video about that, or not a yeah, I'll probably do a video about that. Um, Oh, and this happened to you in TJ, Jose? Man, like TJ is Tijuana, for those who don't know, right over the border near San Diego in California. I've walked across the border to Tijuana, but I also went with two guys who speak fluent Spanish. So I was, you know, trying to navigate that situation, but I did not bring any cannabis with me on that trip, nor did I have any while I was there. I was there for like, I don't know, 10 hours because I was at a conference in San Diego, and I had just never been to Mexico at that point in time. So I just said, why don't we just drive down for a second? Queen, is it Queen Euglet? I think is your name. You're asking what's your name, please. My name is Joannis, or some people call me Joe. My last name is Hatagua. All right. All right. Now, guys, it has been an hour and 51 minutes. Let's bring this thing to a close. It's been great. I love talking to you guys. It feels like I'm just having a conversation. And so I really, this has been great. I appreciate all of you for following and joining live. Those of you who are watching the replay, if you watched it back all the way this far, thank you for watching all the way to the end. I got plenty of content now that I'm going to be doing over the next couple of lives. So we'll try to bring on some people who are either experts and or have a counter argument, because maybe we can make it a little bit of a debate sometimes. Okay, so nice to meet you too. Older than Methuselah. Um, yes, be back for the cannabis discussion. It will be an interesting one, and I'll probably do my experience with cannabis here. SM says they're 100% with the bill. Wow. Miss P says good night, everyone. All right, good night, guys. Thanks for joining. I appreciate you all being here. With that, I'm going to end the broadcast now. So thanks again, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.